with the BBC for many years, and then now you're teaching art and theology at Regent College. How did that shift happen?
Yeah, so I studied theology before I joined the BBC and thought I was heading for a career in teaching. But while I was finishing my doctorate, I was applying for academic jobs and nothing much was happening there because I was up against people who, had finished their doctorates. I was still working on mine. And in the middle of that time, my mother called me to say that she'd seen an advert for a job in the religion department of the BBC. Religion, at that time, there is still a religion department at the BBC, actually, religion and ethics it's called now. But it's been part of the BBC since the beginning, actually, almost 100 years now of the BBC. And it was making radio programs to begin with. I applied for this job and got it, much to my amazement. And then I was producing religious services, talks on the radio. Then fairly quickly I was asked to produce a weekly documentary and discussion series called All Things Considered. And fairly shortly after that I ended up presenting it. So for 6 years or 7 years I produced and presented this weekly program, which was just an incredible education. Every week was, I had to find a subject, to find a topic that was going to be of interest to the general public, but also of a religious nature, either exploring some dimension of the news, a news story that had a strong religious element, or a new book that had come out, or a movement I could do a documentary about. So I learnt, a lot about the arts through that, I suppose. And then I moved into television eventually, and I never started out with the intention that I was an artist. I always thought of myself as a kind of almost like a part of the Christian mission. I trying to do it subtly because the BBC is a secular organisation. Yeah. But over time, I realised that actually making programmes is very much an artistic process, and making documentaries is certainly that. And I learnt from the way that other people made programmes and films. I learnt from a lot of atheists, really good things about loving the film and loving the subject matter. And so over the years, some of the subjects, of course, were themselves about the arts and sometimes religion and the arts. So although I didn't start out as an artist, by the end of my time at the BBC, I realised that actually, that filmmaking is very much part of the arts. I left the BBC in 2010 thinking that I'd continue making specifically Christian films if I could outside of a BBC context. But then this opportunity at Regent College presented itself, and I got into a conversation about applying for a job there, which was in theology and the arts. And it seemed to make sense. Brought my theology and my life as a filmmaker together.
So now you're here at Cross Current,
yeah,
teaching a media group. Thinking of the group that you have now, where do you see them in their journey, and what would you like them to learn this weekend?
We're actually talking about the imagination this weekend.
I was going to ask, yes.
And we're trying to understand what the imagination is, and what were the distinctive aspects of the Christian imagination. The imagination is something common to all human beings. It's an incredible human capacity that actually applies equally outside of the arts as it does inside. We can't do anything without imagination, actually. Mm-hmm. Scientists have learned that their scientific theories, their work as scientists is very much concerned with the imagination as well, making links with things, considering possibilities and then testing them out. And so we use the imagination for all sorts of things, and certainly in the arts it's a really important thing. It's part of our humanity. But But then I think there are specifically Christian aspects to this that we need it. All of us need educated imaginations, and from a Christian point of view, we need educated Christian imaginations. We need to be thinking and having our thought, our view of the world deeply shaped by the Christian story, by central beliefs, doctrines about who God is, who we are, who Jesus Christ is, what the incarnation, the fact that Jesus Christ took on flesh, what that means for life. And all of these things, they've got profound consequences for everything actually in life, but certainly for the way our imaginations are shaped and how we think about the very purpose of what we make, what we do in life.
Could you say some more about what you mean with educated imagination?
Yeah, I mean, I think children have imaginations, and certainly it's a great thing to have that sort of imaginative instinct, which simply can produce things, and is not afraid of making up a story, drawing a picture, very immediately. But the longer you go on in life, I think children have to understand all sorts of things, and they've got to learn about life. And when it comes to the arts and when it comes to creativity, we learn actually, yes, we need instinct, and we have that, but it can be trained and it can be educated, and we need to learn about what's good art and what is bad art. There are matters of taste there, but also matters of judgment about the skillfulness of things and the craft of things. So all of that, I think, goes into an educated imagination. You can go into an art gallery and kind of enjoy it, but you'll enjoy it so much more, actually, if you know a bit about the art and the artists whose paintings you're looking at, and the connections between them. All of these things go to an appreciation of the art, certainly, and the imagination. And I think from a kind of a producer point of view, people who are in the creative industries, that they need to have imaginations that are educated in the history of their craft, but also in the kind of judgments about how good it is, the excellence of it. All of that contributes, I think, to the educated imagination. And from a Christian point of view, a theologically educated imagination. I think that's something we all need, actually, whether we're in the arts or if we're in law or medicine or just parenting. We need imaginations that are shaped by the Christian vision.
You had your group read a chapter by Andy Crouch. Does that, what you mean as educated imagination, does that relate in any way to learning a discipline, as Andy Crouch says in his book?
Yeah, I mean, it could mean that. I certainly think that the people who are in this group, they represent different genres, different disciplines. So we've got graphic designers there, we've got journalists there, we've got people who are interested in television, we've got people who are interested in writing stories and poetry. So I think the genre that you're in, you need to be looking for excellence and aware of what excellence is in your craft. Not to say that you're slavishly following rules, but you need to know enough about the shape of this discipline to be able to exercise good judgment and to aim high, to really know what's good in your discipline. So I think that's part of it as well.
Given the environment that we're in today, what would you say, or thinking about the group that you're leading, what would you say are some of the challenges they have to face?
I think one of the challenges is actually taking our work seriously and thinking this really matters. It's not, again, this is, I'm sure, a common theme across all of these groups in in the project, that why does this matter? Now, maybe medicine, you can see healing, oh, that's good, it's kind of got a biblical connotation to it. But why be a really excellent litigation lawyer? Why be an excellent communicator in school, teacher? Well, it's kind of good because you're influencing people, maybe in a Christian direction. Is that all? Do we have a vision of the public good? Do we have a vision of contributing to the life of the world through our work? So I think that is something that all of us have got to figure out. And I think because of the kind of divisions in our minds that a lot of us have as Christians, this is holy work because it's church kind of related, and this is not so important because it's just earning a living, or it's not as important as mission in the overt kind of Christian mission sense. I think a lot of us have got these categories in our mind that we have to overcome. So I think that's a common problem, but it's certainly a problem, I think, for people in media and arts-related, work, because quite often in their churches they're made to think that this is not all that important, really. This is just some kind of entertainment, or it's some kind of frivolous thing. So actually taking our work seriously as a contribution to the life of the world and to the life of God's world, life as God's people in God's world. I think that's a tough one. I think then, for folks in media particularly, there are lots of pressures. Again, they're not unique by any means to the media world. I think people in all walks of life know the pressures of the culture upon us, and they're pressures of conformity often, aren't they? Scripture tells us, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. What does that mean in the world of journalism? What does that mean in a world where we have this phrase of fake news flying around the place? Illusion, falsehood. These are things that we often associate with the media. Well, I think folk who are involved in media need to address that and certainly be aware of it, but also not be afraid that, this is a place where we can actually be active Christians, shaping the public debate, shaping what's happening in news and in kind of cultural output of all kinds across the board. So contributing to that in a context which is often not sympathetic to the Christian faith, is a tricky one, but a very necessary one.
What impact has it had in your career that you are a Christian, would you say?
I used to think that I was there to get across Christian content. That's really, and that was the only justification for being there. The longer I was there, the more I came to realize, no, actually, it's the quality of my work, whatever the subject matter is. Does it have depth? Does it have emotional and intellectual impact? Is it beautiful and well made? Those things are important. But even that, I came to believe in the end that actually perhaps the most important thing was just my presence in a business which often seems unsympathetic to the Christian faith. Actually, I think that's sometimes overdone, but also in a context where the people I was working with, had very little knowledge sometimes of who a Christian is, what a Christian is, what the Christian faith is, and I came to appreciate incredibly deeply. It was a privilege to work in an industry like television, which is very much team orientated. You can't be just an individualist in film and television. It's very much teamwork. And I learned so much from my colleagues, as I say, many of whom were atheists, but visionary nevertheless, and really kind of deeply committed to what they were doing, and to work alongside them and to be a witness for Christ in that context. Maybe that's, looking back on it, that may be the most important thing. I can't point to conversions and many kind of overt signs of a successful Christian life in those terms at the BBC, but I can point to lots of friendships that are deep and meaningful, and conversations I've had with people over the years that are ongoing. They still go on with former colleagues and things, and I for me, that may be one of the most important things about it all. I've always believed in theology for the people of God, not just for the religious professionals, for everybody. And because I moved out of the theological world into the world of the BBC, I came to appreciate that way more deeply over the years. I think a lot of churches just don't take lay people and their lives very, very seriously. I feel that a lot of what churches do is oriented towards the machinery of the church, the way that it's financed, or the kind of the meetings, the successful meetings that it runs. And, those are good. I mean, I don't want to belittle that, but I think often it's very inward looking. And I think the notion of equipping the people of God to live their lives out in the world is really key. So over the years at the BBC, I came to see how important theology is for the whole of life, not just for the religious part of us, but for the whole of life, the whole of our vision as human beings. And that's why I appreciate what's happening in Cross Currents. I mean, I think it's a vision that took me to Regent College. Actually, Regent College was actually formed for lay people, not for religious professionals, but for people in all walks of life who need a theological education. I think that's true for all of us. We need to be theologically educated, informed, thinking Christians. And my time at the BBC just reinforced all of that for me, that, I needed it, and I found it beneficial. I want other people to have that possibility as well.